someone requested for a video on fuel saving habits, and I want to cover them a bit. Fuel now is too expensive. When the year began, we were buying fuel at about 3,300, 3,500. Now we are buying fuel at 6,500, almost double the amount we used to buy it. So you want to know, how do you save fuel? Number one, you need to check your logbook. You have your logbook. You need to check it and find out what tires were prescribed for your car. When people buy cars here in Uganda, especially if you're buying a third or second-hand car, okay, let's say fourth-hand car in Uganda. If you're driving a car that was driven by a number of people in Kampala, most of the times, let me give you an example of cars like Primo, Spacio. If it was prescribed Wish, you'll find that manufacturer, the Toyota company, says this car is supposed to use 14 size tire. Now, normally when people buy these cars, because they have bumper problems with the roads, because of our roads and bumpers keep going off, the mechanics, their mechanics advise them to put bigger tires. You put size 15 or 16 to make the car put the car higher. And that is bad, because the bigger the tires, the bigger the circumference. That's what they call it in mathematics, I think. It's the round size. The size is longer. It means the car has to drive it for more revolutions, and it uses more energy. And also the tire is bigger. It's heavier in the kgs, which means if it's heavier, the car uses more fuel to drive it. Okay, so the car will definitely use more fuel. Now, before you even look at spark plugs and all that, you need to look at what tires does your car have versus what Toyota said it should have. That's number one. Number two, you need to figure out, is your air filtration system okay? Most of the times we keep driving the car, and when you go to the fuel station with your mechanic to do service, what they do is they get the air filter out of it without even telling you, and then they blow dust out of it, and then they will tell you, but in actual sense, every 2 times you do a service, you're supposed to change the air filter once. Okay, and then because if the car doesn't breathe, just imagine yourself choked with your nose not getting, without you breathing air through your nose. Can you imagine the way you suffer if you've had sleep paralysis once and then you can't breathe? That's how the car is with the clogged air filter. Okay, you need to make sure that the air filter is as clear as possible. So every 8,000 miles or 10,000 miles, 10,000 kilometers, buy a new air filter and put it in there. You don't wait for your mechanic to tell you what to do. Okay, and then the air filtration system itself, you see, it has all the straws that take the air. Okay, you need to make sure that none of those straws, or the mechanics call it obuseke. Okay, as in seke zitwala empewo from the air filter going to the engine. Sometimes the mechanics block those things intentionally. Okay, now you want to make sure that none of those things are blocked. Okay, if you're going to work with your mechanic, make sure he shows you each of them, and that none of them is actually blocked. Okay, then we have talked about the air filtration system, we've talked about the air filter, and then those straws and pipes that take the wind, and you have to make sure that they're actually tightened and none of them is blocked. Number 3, you need to make sure you have the right spark plugs. Now, this is something I normally tell car owners. You bought a car at about 20 million, at about 14 million, 10 million, even if you bought it 6 million, and you don't want to put expensive plugs in your car. Okay, I'll give you an example. Whenever I buy a car, the first thing I do is change the spark plugs, and I buy my plugs from Toyota Uganda. Okay, now the plugs at Toyota Uganda, with some car brands they are very expensive, with other car brands they are very, very affordable. For example, I have a 2001 Corolla, and the plugs that I put in this car, when bought from Toyota, they cost me about 65,000. Now, if I want to buy them in Chiseka market, they will cost me 80,000. See, Toyota Uganda is actually cheaper than Chiseka market. However, if you're going to buy plugs for a Sienta 2006 or for a Fielder, they're going to cost you about 380 to 450,000. But why do you want to buy plugs from Toyota Uganda? It is because the plugs are genuine. You want to see? Go and buy plugs from Toyota Uganda and then go to Chiseka market, tell them to show you their best plugs. You will actually see the difference. Let it be color, let it be the length. They are very different. And the plugs at Toyota Uganda, you'll drive them for more than 3 years without actually changing, and your fuel consumption, the fuel consumption of your car will change drastically. So you want to make sure that you buy plugs, and you want to make sure that you buy genuine plugs. Now, if you're driving a Nissan, okay, you want to go to a Nissan dealership and buy plugs from the Nissan dealership. If you're driving a Mercedes-Benz, come on, you can buy a Mercedes-Benz and maintain it. You can surely go to Spare Motors and buy genuine spark plugs. Okay, put spark plugs for your car that are genuine. You will see a change in fuel consumption. We have talked about the air filtration system. We have talked about the spark plugs. Okay, we have also talked about the tires. Okay, now the other thing you want to do, you want to make sure that your fuel filtration system is also working perfectly. Now, why am I saying this? If your filter is not working very well, or if your filter is clogged, the engine will not get enough fuel. It will use a lot of energy, so it will pull. It will need a lot more fuel to drive in a place where it would have needed a very small amount of fuel. So you want to make sure that your fuel system is also clear, not clogged. Okay, and just the way you change the air filter, you want to also change your fuel system, fuel filters every now and then. Okay, you want to make sure that it's also healthy. Now, you also want to make sure that your fuel pump is healthy. Most of the times when your car is stalling when your car is you want to make sure that your fuel pump is okay. Sometimes the mechanic will make you buy all sorts of things, sensors and all, when in actual sense what is dying is your fuel pump. And if your fuel pump is not working very well, the engine will keep getting a small amount of fuel. When your engine keeps getting a small amount of fuel, it uses a lot of energy. Now, you're not only using a lot of fuel, you're also damaging your engine because you're overworking it. Now, someone will tell me that if a fuel pump is not working very well, then maybe it's giving my engine small amounts of fuel, which means I should be saving fuel. No! When the engine gets a very small amount of fuel, it uses a lot of energy. The more energy it uses, the more fuel it needs. So it will actually overwork the fuel pump. Okay? The fuel pump will end up bringing actually more and more fuel. So you want to make sure that the fuel system is also doing very well. You want to make sure that the fuel, you see the fuel system, the fuel pump pumps fuel to the engine. Now, there is a residue fuel that actually goes back to the fuel tank. It uses the same pressure, okay? Fuel comes via the fuel pump, fuel filter, and then it comes to the engine. The engine burns some fuel, okay? Now, if your fuel pump is bad, it doesn't have enough pressure to take back fuel to the fuel tank, okay? But if the fuel pump is okay, the pressure will be enough to take fuel to the engine, and then pump the residue fuel back to the tank. And that's what you want happening. So you want to make sure that the fuel pump is okay. But you also want to check the pipes that take fuel back to the tank to make sure they were not blocked. Some mechanics are idiots. When the fuel pump is not working as it should, what they do, instead of telling the car owner to buy a new fuel pump, they block the fuel return system. Okay, so they just block that pipe. And when the car owner buys a new fuel pump, they don't unblock it, or probably they buy the fuel pump using another mechanic who doesn't know that it was blocked, and it keeps blocked. So your car continues consuming fuel, but in actual sense the car has no problem. It's the fuel return system that was blocked. So fuel doesn't go back. So the car ends up consuming, using up all the fuel, even what it doesn't need. Okay, so we've talked about the tires, we've talked about the fuel, the air filtration system, we've talked about the plugs, we have talked about the fuel system as well. Now, as you drive, the braking system can also make your car consume fuel. The brakes, this normally happens with cars that don't have discs at the back. Now, there are sporty cars like the Toyota Vitz RS, which is a 1.3, the Mark IIs, they have discs behind. But there are also cars that don't have discs. Now, if your car is one that doesn't have discs behind, you're going to make sure that when they put new brakes and they set them to the point that they don't jam. Because if your braking system, the back braking, the two tires behind, they are jamming in any way, your engine is going to be using a lot of energy. Okay, that is if actually it doesn't catch fire, because if the brakes jam, there is a lot of heat generated behind there. Yeah, but anyway, if they are jamming, your engine is going to end up using a lot of fuel, because it's using a lot of energy to actually push the car. Actually, when the brakes are jamming and you're driving, you will feel, if you're cautious, you will feel that the car is struggling to move. Okay, so you want to make sure that your braking system is actually very well set. Now, if you go to amateur mechanics and you put new brakes, because the braking is not good, you'll still face that problem, and you don't want to. So you have to also make sure that your braking system is good. Now, there are a number of sensors that will also affect your fuel system. But if you're driving a newer car, 2001 and later, the cars that have air flow meters, you want to make sure that your air flow meter is clean. Okay, you don't always have to buy a new air flow meter every time your car stalls. Okay, you don't have to buy a new air flow meter all the time. But to also avoid you buying a new air flow meter ever, make sure that you know where the air flow meter is and that you have it cleaned once in a while. For example, when you go for service, or when your mechanic is changing your spark plugs, make sure that they clean the air flow meter, and you also look at it and make sure it has no dust. Some of those newer cars, when the air flow meter is dirty, they will actually be stalling, they will use a lot of fuel, and then the mechanic will make you buy plugs, air cleaners, batteries, and all that. So you don't want to do that. So last but not least, you want to make sure that you drive the right way. Okay, now when you're driving a car, speed is nice, being in front is nice, but mathematics should rule over you when you're driving. What am I saying? You want to go to a place and you're going to drive 30 minutes. Why do you leave late at home? Because when you leave late, it means you will have to drive fast. You will panic, you will slow the accelerator, and you don't want to do that. Now you want to drive slow. Now, how do you drive slow? When you're driving, make sure that the rev, you know the meter that shows the revolutions per second, per minute, I mean, you know that place where and it has times 1000 R over a minute. Those are the revs that you want to make sure that they don't go beyond 2000 revs. So it has 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You don't want that to go beyond 2000 revs per second. Because the moment it goes past 2000 revs per second, then the engine is actually overworking and it's going to use a lot of fuel. So you want to make sure that when you're driving, you drive modestly. Okay, you drive like old people. So you want to make sure ntuvuga mpura nti akalimi ka revolution yako tekasuka 2000 revs per minute. Okay, and it's possible. Also, you want to make sure that when you're going downhill, you don't press the accelerator. Am I clear? When you're going downhill, let it go. Okay, let the car flow. And if you're going downhill and the car is not going as fast as you think it should, then the brakes, you remember the brakes I talked about, the two back tires, then the brakes actually have a problem. because if the brakes are set, the tires are supposed to be able to flow freely when you're not pressing the brakes. Now if you're going downhill and that is not happening, then you should go get your brakes set properly. Now when you're going downhill, watch all in your muliro. People, seriously, watch all in your muliro. Then afterwards you send your motoka yang in your mafu. Nenga moboki yaka sele ngito watch all in your muliro. Okay? So when you're going downhill, let the car flow. Direke your car. Okay? You will see that your fuel consumption will actually go down. Number 2, don't overtake. When Uganda yafe, bobo planning bulungi obuddemo, you don't need to overtake. Let's do some math. When you overtake, have you ever overtaken someone and then you reach the traffic lights in a guy you're putting mass? You see, that should prove that you don't need to overtake. Whenever you overtake, you use a lot of energy, you flow the accelerator, the engine uses a lot of energy. When it uses a lot of energy, it takes a lot of fuel. Cutting a motor yeah. Like if you went to a fuel pump and you saw the meter counting, don't overtake. But don't put if it's an automatic, don't put in neutral. Leave it in drive and let it go on its own, turning the accelerator, and you just play with the brakes. When you fuel, if you can, put a lot of fuel in your car. Okay? The you go to the petrol station. You feel like you're saving, but you're actually wasting. You're wasting your time. Because if you spend 10 minutes at a pump or 5 minutes every day at a pump, take a more mutwalo. Get a week. Put 70,000 of fuel in your tank. This week's again okay? Now, apart from saving time, even the stress of Kati, the fuel station is the other side. Now I have to cross over. You mitigate all those risks. Now, okay, back to the fuel saving. A motor car, a car is like people. Have you ever been in a house where there's a lot of food? You don't even get hungry. Lots of. Bwesika amafuta newuliranga ngeza teri ngegasigaza. I'm not saying it's true, but theoretically, ask anyone and they'll tell you that a car that has a lot of fuel, ask any person that has driven the car for you for some time. And it's true. But if you're going to use, let's say you use 200,000 a month of fuel, you just want to have the cash in your pocket. If you use 200,000 of fuel a month, and you know that month you're going to move regardless of what, put the fuel, okay? You will be relaxed. Okay? Also, if you put enough fuel in the car, you take away the risk of a motor case. Now I have to get a border to go get me fuel, or poor quality fuels, because after there is no good fuel station like the Shell. And you're risking a lot, so you will mitigate all those good. So put fuel. I'm after go kwesa week gateke mu on a Sunday, so that you drive from Monday to Saturday without needing to refuel again. Saving. I'm after you will see. Now, if you're the kind of person that has a car, full tank sell the car and buy a car that is full. Okay? So the minimum you should have in your car should be quarter of a tank, and make sure the fuel gauge works, because the gauge doesn't work, so you can't know how much fuel you put without a gauge. Okay, the very last point, stop lending out your car. Okay, if you're the kind of person that has a car, you have friends that don't have cars, if you have friends that love driving cars, encourage them to buy cars. Okay, so that none of you actually borrows another person's car, because in when someone borrows your car and it has your fuel, it is going to drive it. Now the next time you drive it, if for example it doesn't have a gauge, you will not know that it's either him or you that drove that fuel. And then drive your car alone. And if someone needs a ride, drive them. If you can't drive them, let them call an Uber. Things are very, very, very simple these days. They can call an Uber, or they can go and rent a car, self-drive, okay? So we mitigate all those costs. There are so many things that you can avoid that limit. So let me just go through a summary now, so that you remember. Number one, make sure your car has the right tire size. If Toyota said your car is supposed to have 13 size tires, put 13 size tires. If you bought the car and it had 14, remove the tires, put the right tire size. Make sure the air filtration system is okay. Okay? Make sure that your car has genuine and good spark plugs. Okay? Make sure that your car fuel filtration and fuel system is also okay. Also, you also want to make sure that your brakes, the brakes are okay. Okay? That especially the back two tires, if your car doesn't have this. Now, if your car has discs, it's okay. They are probably fine. Okay? Then you also want to make sure that the fuel system, the fuel pump, the fuel filter, you want to make sure that they are also very, very okay. I think we have covered, and then you don't want to lend your car, and then you want to also make sure that you have a good amount of fuel in your tank all the time, because the less fuel the car has, let's face it, you know when you're broke, you get hungry all the time. I don't know how that happens, and I'm thinking the psychology goes back to also cars. So you want to make sure that you work on all those things, and you will have no problem with your car consuming fuel. But let me just make sure your engine is good, it doesn't consume oil and all that. Your spark plugs don't get wet because of oil. Well, if you have all that worked on, until next time, ciao.